Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. They thought a few tomato pots made them farmers. They thought clipboards could conquer acres. But when a suburban HOA tries to absorb a no-nonsense Iowa farmer into their community collective, they trigger a battle of land, pride, and absurdity. Welcome to the farm war you never saw coming. They say the world's split into two types of people: those who grow food and those who post pictures of basil in mason jars pretending it's agriculture. I'm firmly the first kind. My name's Travis Collins, I'm 38, and I run a 120-acre working farm in Mason County, Iowa. This isn't some decorative plot with raised beds and Pinterest sunflowers. This is rows of corn that stretch to the horizon, grain silos that hum through winter, and a couple hundred head of cattle that I know better than most people. I've got business licenses, tax records thick as bricks, and a diesel-stained John Deere combine that costs more than some houses. This is my job, my life, and my land, and I take pride in all three. Across the two-lane county road from my property lies Greenway Hills, a neatly packed suburb built maybe a decade ago. You know the kind: HOA-controlled cookie-cutter homes with plastic fences and identical mailboxes. The residents take pride in their gardens, which usually mean 4 tomato plants and a potted rosemary bush. On weekends, they pull on straw hats from Walmart and call it urban homesteading. I've always kept my distance, not out of snobbery, but because I've seen what happens when people with zero understanding of soil try to lecture you about sustainability. For years, we coexisted, them with their lawn care companies and seasonal flags, me with my mud-streaked boots and 5:30 a.m. tractor starts. We didn't mix, and that was just fine. That all changed when Karen Milton took over as president of the HOA. Karen came in hot, organizing neighborhood meetings, issuing flyers about fence uniformity, and even trying to regulate mailbox flags. She had the energy of a substitute teacher on a power trip, only she didn't stop at her own turf. No, Karen had visions. Visions that went beyond gated lawns and potluck committees. Suddenly, I started noticing odd things. A flyer stuck on my gate about neighborly land stewardship, a smiling woman snapping photos near my tool shed, and one day, a small group of residents in floppy hats standing at the edge of my soybean field taking notes. I chalked it up to bored suburban curiosity, but something in the air shifted. The emails started coming, strange, overly formal notes from the HOA suggesting a friendly collaboration between neighboring agricultural interests. One even had the subject line, "Proposed Integration Greenway Farming Community." I nearly choked on my coffee. I wanted to laugh. I should have laughed. But something told me Karen Milton wasn't just playing pretend. It was a Wednesday morning, hot, humid, with the kind of sky that warns you it's thinking about a thunderstorm but hasn't quite committed. I was out by the north line replacing a busted fence post that one of the heifers had taken a liking to as a scratching post. That's when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel followed by voices, chipper, overly rehearsed voices, coming up my drive. I turned around, squinting against the sun. And there they were, a small delegation from Greenway Hills walking toward me like a HOA parade float. Leading them, of course, was Karen Milton. She was flanked by 2 residents, one wearing gardening gloves and a canvas apron, the other carrying a clipboard. Karen held what looked suspiciously like a rolled-up poster board and walked with the pomp of someone about to present a diploma to a goat. "Mr. Collins," she beamed, "I'm so glad we caught you. We'd love a moment of your time." I wiped the sweat off my brow with my forearm and leaned against the fence post. "Make it quick." Karen unrolled the document with a flair worthy of a courtroom drama. At the top, in cursive font, it read, "Greenway Farmers Collective, Cooperative Growers Agreement." My name was listed third from the top, underlined in highlighter. "What in the hell is this?" I asked, taking a step closer. "It's our collective charter," Karen said proudly. "As a fellow grower, you qualify for automatic membership. According to our HOA expansion bylaw 6.4b, when 2 or more agricultural properties are contiguous, they may be considered one collective farming initiative. That includes shared use of non-residential acreage for community benefit." I blinked. "You think your tomato tubs and parsley patches qualify you as farmers? We grow produce. You grow produce. There's no need to gatekeep the term." The man with the clipboard chimed in. We believe this collaboration could enrich community connection. We're proposing access schedules, shared maintenance of border areas, and educational tours for Greenway kids." "No," I said flatly. Karen didn't miss a beat. "We've already included your name in the proposal we're sending to the County Agi Committee. Just a formality, really." She handed me a folder with printed maps. My fields were shaded in pastel green. My fields. "You drew this up without my permission." "Well, we assumed you'd be thrilled. You're part of the ecosystem here, Mr. Collins. It's all one big food web." I couldn't believe the words coming out of her mouth. I'd met government agents with less gall. "Let me make something very clear," I said, folding the folder and handing it back. "This is a private business, my land, my operation. I don't share it with hobbyists or committees. Now get off my property." They exchanged glances. Karen forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We'll give you some time to consider, but understand, as neighbors, we all benefit from a spirit of cooperation. The HOA supports this initiative fully." As they turned to leave, the woman in the gardening gloves muttered, "So rude." Karen didn't turn back, but I saw her mouth move, probably reciting bylaws like some bureaucratic mantra. I stood there in stunned silence for a good minute, then turned and looked out over the field. The rows were clean, the irrigation system freshly checked, the fence straight, everything I had built with my own calloused hands. And they thought they could just absorb it. That was the moment I felt it. Not just irritation, but something sharper, a tension coiling just beneath the skin. They weren't done. I knew it. Karen Milton didn't carry a clipboard unless she planned to use it like a sword. And this was just the first swing. I figured they'd back off after our little chat. I was wrong. It started small. On Saturday, I spotted a couple walking along the eastern fence line, the edge nearest Greenway Hills, both wearing wide-brimmed hats like they were auditioning for Little House on the Prairie. They had their phones out, pointing at my grain silo like it was a tourist attraction. One even waved at me. I didn't wave back. Sunday, it escalated. I was feeding the cattle when I heard giggling, not the kind you hear on farms where the sounds are usually more earthy. I looked over and saw a group of teenagers posing for selfies against the hay bales, one of them sitting on my fence with her booted foot dangling over into the corral. A minute later, one of my Angus steers wandered toward them, and someone actually tried to feed it a bagel. I stormed out from the barn, voice raised, but still holding on to that last thread of decency. "Off my property, now." They scattered like deer, one girl tripping over a camera bag. I thought that might be the end of it, until I noticed the plastic HOA badge clipped to the shirt of the guy with the camera. He had a clipboard too. Of course he did. By Tuesday, my farm had become some kind of HOA-led eco-educational attraction. A makeshift sign appeared overnight near the fence. "Community Agri-Learning Zone. Watch the harvest. Respect the cows." What in God's name is an agri-learning zone? Then came the last straw. That morning, I walked out with my coffee and nearly choked. Someone had hung a Greenway Hills banner on the side of my barn, duct taped to the tin siding like they were claiming it for the Queen. And just as I was peeling it off, I noticed a man, a full-grown man, climbing my combine harvester with his kid on his shoulders. The kid was waving a garden trowel like it was a toy sword. I shouted so loud the birds flew out of the trees. "Get the hell off that machine." He looked surprised, like Art was the one being unreasonable. "It's just for pictures, man. We're part of the Community Growers Group. You're standing on $400,000 of equipment you don't understand. You fall, you die. Your kid gets caught in a blade, he dies. You're trespassing. Off. Now." The man climbed down, grumbling, and made a big show of dusting off his cargo shorts. That's when Karen showed up. She pulled up in her crossover, stepped out in her lemon print blouse like she was headed to brunch, and looked around with a smirk. "I told them to be respectful," she said sweetly, "but you know how excited people get about community agriculture. We're organizing a seasonal tour schedule. Think of it as open farm days." I was shaking now, not from fear, but pure, boiling disbelief. "Karen, this is not a damn fairground. You don't get to schedule tours of my farm like it's a pumpkin patch at a kindergarten." She crossed her arms. "Your fields border the Greenway Hills HOA jurisdiction. You've been unofficially included in the community plan. It's called adjacency. It's called trespassing. And that's when she pulled out her phone. "I'm sorry to have to do this," she said, dialing, "but we can't have a member of the agricultural collective threatening residents." I blinked. "You're calling the cops? On me? For trying to keep strangers off my private land?" She nodded solemnly. "You've refused community access and are interfering with communal agricultural rights." She said it like it was an actual law. 10 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy pulled into my drive. His name tag read Hobson, and I recognized him. He used to buy eggs for me on Sundays. He stepped out slowly, looking equal parts exhausted and amused. "Morning, Travis. We got a call about community access violations." I pointed to the Greenway banner still half flapping on the barn, the muddy footprints on the combine, and then to the woman who caused all of it. "You see what's going on here?" Hobson looked at Karen, then back at me. "Do you have your deed on hand?" I walked into the house, came back with property records, my ag business license, land surveys, and a USB drive with security footage from the past week. Every fence hopper, every cow petter, every selfie with my tractor in the background. He took a long look at the documents, then at Karen. "Ma'am," he said, "this property is clearly private. It's not part of any HOA boundary. You and your residents don't have the right to enter, organize events, or make use of it in any way. If I get another call like this, we'll be looking at criminal trespassing." Karen's mouth tightened into a sour little lemon line. "I'll consult with legal," she sniffed. "Do that," I said, "but next time, come with a warrant or a shovel. Either you're suing me or you're here to work." She didn't laugh. I did. As the patrol car pulled away, and Karen followed soon after, something in me settled, but only for a moment, because deep down, I knew she wasn't finished. You don't put up a banner unless you think you own the barn. I've always been a patient man. Comes with the territory. Crops don't grow faster just because you glare at them. You learn to wait, to breathe, to pick your battles. But even the deepest well of patience runs dry when people keep dipping buckets into it with a backhoe. 2 mornings after the police visit, I woke up to find a set of wooden steps nailed into my fence, leading over into my pasture. Steps. Like a goddamn invitation. Next to it, a laminated HOA bulletin titled Upcoming Community Farm Walkthroughs, Tentative Dates. There was a color-coded schedule. Someone had drawn a smiley face on Saturday. I stood there, teeth grinding, fists clenched so tight my knuckles popped. This wasn't overreach anymore. This was invasion. A polite, pastel-colored, garden-gloved invasion, but invasion all the same. I tore down the steps and the bulletin, chucked both into the burn barrel behind the shed, and didn't even wait for the flames to die before I called up my old friend, Denny Rourke. Denny and I went to high school together. These days, he's a real estate and land use attorney who looks like he chews nails for breakfast and files lawsuits for dessert. "Denny," I growled into the phone, "you ever sue an HOA into the Stone Age?" There was a pause and then his low chuckle. "I'm listening." We met that afternoon at his office in town. I brought everything: land titles, tax records, photos, a flash drive full of trespassing incidents, including one where someone spray-painted Greenway Community Compost on the side of my chicken coop. That one especially lit a fire under Denny. He paged through my stack, nodding, then looked up with that familiar gleam in his eye, the one he used to get before a football game. "They've fabricated a cooperative without consent, entered private land, attempted to assign you to bylaws you never agreed to, and interfered with the operation of a licensed agricultural business. We're talking trespass, nuisance, defamation, and possible business interference." "Good," I said, "because I'm done talking to clipboard crusaders. I want this handled." We drafted a cease and desist that very day and sent it by courier to the HOA office and directly to Karen Milton's home, which I'll admit felt petty, but deeply satisfying. We also filed notice of intent to sue with the county clerk, citing specific violations. I remember standing in Denny's parking lot after signing everything, the weight of it all suddenly lifting, like someone had finally handed me a hammer and pointed to the wall I'd been banging my head against. But it wasn't just about the fence, or the cows, or the godforsaken signs. It was about the principle, the right to own something, truly own it, and not have it slowly papered over by people who think bureaucracy is a valid form of conquest. That night, I sat on my porch, boots up on the railing, and watched the storm clouds roll in from the west. Real ones this time, not metaphorical. I took a sip of beer and smiled for the first time in weeks. Let it rain. The courthouse smelled like coffee, floor wax, and the faint tension of people trying not to explode. It was a gray Tuesday morning when I walked into the Mason County Courthouse, wearing my best pair of jeans, a clean button-down, and boots I'd polished the night before. Not to impress anyone, but because I wanted the judge to see exactly what kind of man he was dealing with. I wasn't some cranky neighbor whining about a mailbox. I was a farmer defending my land. Denny met me at the door, dressed in a steel gray suit that made him look like a lawsuit in motion. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Ready to harvest some HOA nonsense?" "Let's plow," I said. Karen Milton was already seated in the courtroom, surrounded by her team. Not lawyers exactly, but 3 HOA board members, all looking like they'd just stepped out of a seasonal decorating catalog. One of them wore a blazer with little embroidered carrots on it. I'm not kidding. She saw me, straightened her spine, and gave a polite little nod, like we were about to debate garden club bylaws over tea. She had a binder the size of a phone book, labeled Greenway Agricultural Integration Plan, 2023 Pilot Phase. I could see colorful tabs and what looked like infographics. I almost felt bad. Almost. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Blanton, took her seat and looked over the docket. Then she glanced up and said, deadpan, "Let's address the case of Greenway Hills HOA versus Collins Agricultural Enterprises, LLC, and vice versa." And just like that, the bell rang. Karen's side went first. She stood up, papers trembling ever so slightly, and launched into a speech that sounded like it had been practiced in front of a mirror or a bathroom audience of succulents. "Your Honor, the HOA only sought to bring the community together through shared agricultural values. Mr. Collins' proximity to our community and the nature of his work made him a natural participant in our collective. We never meant harm. We offered structure, support, and inclusive vision." She spoke like I was being unreasonable for not handing over my acreage in exchange for group potlucks. Then she presented her evidence, a series of HOA flyers, printed maps with my land shaded in, and a newsletter titled Greenway Grows Together. One page included a stock photo of a cow that, I swear to God, was labeled Travis's Communal Dairy Asset. That's when Denny rose. "Your Honor, we'll keep this simple. Exhibit A, Deed of Private Ownership. Exhibit B, Business License registered to Collins Agricultural Enterprises. Exhibit C, Documented evidence of unauthorized access, property damage, signage without consent, and a banner taped to the plaintiff's barn. We also have a flash drive containing over 40 incidents of trespass and harassment." He paused and added, "Oh, and Exhibit D, this ridiculous charter." He held up Karen's Greenway Farmers Collective binder, turned it to the judge, and said, "Note the plaintiff's name is handwritten in pink gel pen." Laughter broke out in the courtroom. Then I took the stand. I spoke plain and true about my land, about the mornings that start before sunrise, about the weight of responsibility when a whole season's work rests on weather, timing, and guts, about coming home to find strangers feeding Twinkies to my cows and calling it educational. I told the judge how it felt to be pushed, prodded, co-opted, and told I was being selfish for wanting to keep what was mine. How a group of people with no understanding of what it means to sweat through a harvest decided they had a right to it. Not because of need, but because of fantasy. I saw something shift in Judge Blanton's expression. I knew then. She understood. She leaned back, tapped her pen twice on the desk, and delivered the verdict. This court finds in favor of Mr. Collins. The HOA's attempt to designate and utilize private land without consent was not only improper, it was absurd. This collective was a fiction constructed without legal foundation and enforced through harassment. The HOA will cease all related initiatives, withdraw any communications involving the plaintiff's property, and pay damages in the amount of $83,200 to compensate for legal fees, repair costs, and business disruption. She paused and added, almost wearily, "This is a courtroom, not a community garden." Karen went pale. One of her board members quietly closed the carrot blazer. The man next to her folded up the charter like a lost crossword puzzle. Denny leaned over and whispered, "We just fertilized the future with the remains of their ego." I let out a long breath. It was done. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I wasn't just holding the line. I'd pushed back. Hard, and won. You'd think winning in court would be the end of it. Bang the gavel, take your check, ride off into the cornfield. But victory's a funny thing. It doesn't just clean up the battlefield, it rattles the village. And oh boy, did Greenway Hills rattle. Word spread fast, faster than seed in high wind. By the time I got home that afternoon, someone had already taped a printed apology to my mailbox. It wasn't signed, but I recognized the clip art, the HOA's signature sunflower graphic. It read, "We regret the recent misunderstandings and sincerely wish to rebuild trust in our community partnership." I tossed it on the dash and laughed all the way to the silo, but the real shift came days later. First, the Greenway Farmers Collective website disappeared, replaced by a stark white screen that read 404 Vision Not Found. Then the neighborhood app lit up with posts concerned about HOA direction. Why are we paying for legal drama? And my personal favorite, can we vote to ban clipboards? Karen? She vanished. Not literally. Her house was still there, lemon-colored shutters and all. But the once daily HOA updates stopped. The committee meetings went on pause, and rumors swirled she'd taken a step back for personal growth. I'm not saying I drove by with my windows down blasting Johnny Cash's "I Won't Back Down," but I'm not saying I didn't. Meanwhile, something strange and almost beautiful began happening. A few of the neighbors, the quieter ones, the ones who'd never spoken up during all this, started reaching out. One brought over a pie. Another came just to shake my hand. A retired couple from the south end of Greenway stopped by with a six-pack and said sheepishly, "We always thought this collective thing was weird. We just didn't know how to say no to her." Turned out a lot of people had been quietly steamrolled. All it took was one loud tractor to push back. Then came Bobby Chen, mid-30s, IT guy, lived in the blue house with the solar panels. He knocked one afternoon with a sheepish grin and a flash drive in his hand. "I made something for you," he said, as a kind of neighborhood icebreaker. What he'd made was a calendar, full-color, high-gloss, featuring candid screenshots from my security camera footage. There was March HOA guy getting chased by a cow, June Karen pointing at the combine with her binder of doom, and October me standing in the rain, holding the cease and desist like a declaration of independence. He called it the year HOA tried to take the farm. I nearly cried laughing. We printed 50. They sold out in 2 days at the local gas station. Denny called it Exhibit Z. Then came the election. The HOA board, shaken and defanged, opened nominations for new leadership. To everyone's surprise, a gardener named Dolores stepped up and gave a speech that ended with, "No more pretending to be farmers, no more harassing real ones." The vote wasn't even close. Under the new board, Greenway Hills started to feel normal, less like a Stepford village, more like a place where people could breathe. The new leadership canceled all pseudo-agricultural programs, issued a formal apology, and even posted boundary maps to clarify once and for all. The Collins farm is not part of Greenway. They printed it in bold, with a little tractor emoji. I still kept my signs up though, especially the one at the front gate. Private farm. If you call a basil pot agriculture, keep walking. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't watching my fields like a hawk. I wasn't waiting for a camera flash or a stray clipboard. I was just farming, and it felt damn good. I thought the whole saga had finally gone quiet. Lawsuit won. Karen gone. HOA declawed. Peace restored. But 2 weeks later, I got a letter, not from a lawyer, not from a nosy neighbor, but from Mrs. Penelope Griggs, the local middle school science teacher. It was handwritten in impeccable cursive on floral stationery. "Dear Mr. Collin." We followed recent news with great interest. Our 7th grade class is studying sustainable agriculture and community land use. We would be honored if you would allow a supervised, respectful, and 100% clipboard-free educational tour of your farm. We'll bring our own snacks. Please consider. Sincerely, Audi Penelope Griggs and 26 hopeful students. I stared at the letter, then burst out laughing. I called her that evening. "Mrs. Griggs," I said. "As long as no one tries to unionize my cows or host a soil chakra workshop, you're welcome anytime." That Friday, they came, a yellow bus filled with grinning kids in muddy sneakers and wide eyes. And unlike the HOA's agrarian adventures, these kids asked permission. They listened, they took notes. One of them even thanked my tractor by name. Halfway through, one kid tugged on my sleeve and said, "Mr. Collins, is it true people tried to steal your farm because they planted herbs?" I nodded solemnly. "That's exactly what happened, son. That's why I built this." I pointed behind him. There it stood, towering beside the barn, a 12-foot wooden sign hand-painted in bold red letters, "Welcome to Collins Farm." If you can't tell a zucchini from a lawn ornament, please consult a professional. No clipboards, no collectives, no kale revolutions. The kids loved it. Mrs. Griggs took photos. I heard one boy mutter, "This is better than Disneyland." Before they left, I handed out free corn and signed copies of the HOA calendar, which had apparently become a hot item in town. I kept one just for show. October, the Great Binder Standoff. The last thing I heard as the bus pulled away was a chorus of kids yelling, "Long live the farm!" I smiled. That's when I knew. The real win wasn't just the court ruling or the payout. It was taking back the story, making the ridiculous into something people learned from, laughed at, maybe even remembered for longer than a harvest cycle. The land was quiet again, but the gate sign stayed up, just in case someone else got clever ideas about community kale.